The Ancient One warned about removing the stones when the Avengers went back in time in Avengers Endgame. I mean, who wants to be the sole reason Dormammu destroyed Earth because the Time Stone was missing? Or prevent Vision from existing? Or preventing the Collector from having 2 Infinity Stones at once? Well, maybe that last one's not that significant, but the other 2 are examples of what could have happened if Captain America didn't replace the stones. While the branches that were created by removing the stones may now be fixed, eagle-eyed fans noticed a couple other branches that weren't fixed after the Avengers meddling. We'll be taking a look at some of these branched timelines, analyzing what happened, and the changes to the future that would have occurred because of it. Welcome to this 2-part video series explaining the different branches created from Avengers Endgame. Part 1. 2012. The most apparent branch came from 2012. Cap, Tony, and Ant-Man head to Stark Tower to get the Space and Mind Stones. Cap was able to get the Mind Stone, still in Loki's scepter, but Loki managed to grab the Space Stone and slipped away with it. So let's walk through this branch timeline step by step. In the elevator with Jasper Sitwell and Brock Rumlow, Cap was able to get Loki's scepter by whispering Hail Hydra. The 2014 events of Captain America Winter Soldier haven't happened yet, so present Cap had the knowledge everyone in the elevator were covert Hydra agents. And for the record, this is a great nod to the famous elevator fight scene from that movie. Present Cap runs into 2012 Cap outside the elevator. The fight is pretty evenly matched until present Cap says Bucky is alive. This gives our Cap the second he needed to win the tussle. Both of these events would affect the 2012 branch timeline, likely kicking off the events of Winter Soldier early. 2012 Cap would be looking for Bucky earlier than he normally would have. Additionally, Hydra might be more bold in attacking Nick Fury and using their helicarriers. They went after Captain America in that movie because they knew he would be a hard target to kill. In this branch though, they believe that Cap is on their side, making their plans easier to execute with one major target out of the way. Now let's look at Tony and Lang's 2012 heist. Ant-Man was supposed to give 2012 Tony a mild cardiac dysrhythmia. This would allow Ant-Man to pass the Space Stone briefcase to present Tony, who would get away from the scene. Unfortunately, 2012 Hulk knocks back present Tony, flinging the Space Stone in front of 2012 Loki, who escapes with it. It would be safe to assume that Tony never had a dysrhythmia in the original MCU timeline, or at least not one this early, because there was no Ant-Man to mess with his arc reactor. A big part of Iron Man 3 was Tony's inability to separate his self-worth from his suit. Tony did a lot of growing in that movie, but could this dysrhythmia scare lead to Tony getting rid of his arc reactor quicker? And finally, Loki. We know what happened to him because 2 seasons of the Loki TV show have come out since Endgame. He quickly ended up at the TVA, met his variant Sylvie, who killed He Who Remains, which freed up the multiverse, which caused the temporal loom to fail, and, spoilers for the end of Season 2, Loki becomes the God of Time. In Season 1, Episode 1 of Loki, the TVA told us that the timeline Loki just left was pruned. But if that was the case, how did Cap return the Mind Stone to a TVA-pruned timeline? Marvel's time travel rules get a little more complicated with each time travel including project. But I think the most obvious answer would be that Loki created a new branch when he left, a branch that is different from the one that Cap and Ant-Man created. As He Who Remains explained, new branches of time are created and pruned when it deviates too far from how He Who Remains wants the sacred timeline to go. And as we see from this timeline picture, branches can appear on other branches. So it's likely the TVA only pruned the Loki escaping branch, and Cap must have returned the stones to the timeline where Loki didn't leave with the Space Stone. 1970. After their failure to steal the Space Stone, Tony remembers one other concrete location that had the Tesseract and more Pym particles: Camp Lehigh. As superfans remember, this is an important location. This is where Captain America trained before taking the Super Soldier Serum, and it was also the base of the SSR, which later became S.H.I.E.L.D. Tony and Cap sneak into the base to gather what they need. Cap steals 4 vials of Pym particles, and Tony steals the Tesseract. Tony gets caught by his dad, Howard Stark, but he's able to talk his way through it. Honestly, I think not too much would change from this branch that was created, and likely this would be a branch that the TVA would not prune because of that. Tony has a conversation with his dad, giving him the closure he never got as a kid. It's very unlikely this one conversation would affect how Howard was going to parent baby Tony, but I'd like to think this interaction causes Howard to use that brilliant quote a few more times than he would have. no amount of money has ever bought a second of time. I want to know, how would Hank Pym react to seeing 4 of his Pym particle vials missing? We already know Hank Pym is paranoid about people, specifically Starks, stealing his work, and he wouldn't be happy when he puts together that the phone call he just received was a ruse to get him to leave the Pym particles. Perhaps this could push him to get into an altercation with Howard and cause him to quit S.H.I.E.L.D. early. Even if Cap did return 4 vials, what interests me is why Cap would steal 4 vials in the first place. It's easy to figure out that the first 2 are used to transport Tony and Cap back to the present. What was he planning on using the other 2 vials for? I've seen a couple theories, but the one that makes the most sense is the simplest one. He grabbed 2 extra so he and Tony could go back to the past if needed. It would be a last-ditch escape route when facing Thanos. If they couldn't stop him, one or both could go back to the past and re-strategize. Another question that comes up is, how would Cap return the Space Stone? The square Tesseract was turned into a small stone in the present. Wouldn't that affect how Loki, Thanos, and anyone else interacted with the Tesseract? And not to mention some of the other stones. The Power Stone can't be touched, and how would trading back the Soul Stone even work? Cap's first stop would be to return the Time Stone. The Ancient One would understand the situation, given she just spoke to Smart Hulk about it. The Ancient One can then use the Time Stone to revert the stones back to their original states. This is one of the first uses of the Time Stone that we saw back in Doctor Strange. Strange brought the apple to an eaten position, then restored it. Likewise, he restored the ripped out pages of the Book of Cagliostro. Under the Ancient One's hand, the Space Stone would revert back to the Tesseract, the Power Stone back in its container, and the Ether back to a liquid in its container. From there, the stones can easily be placed back in their respective timelines. Regarding the Soul Stone, the writers and directors of Endgame answered across different interviews. Anthony and Joe Russo stated, "Nobody knows what the rules are when you return the Soul Stone. Knowing Red Skull, he probably has a no money back policy." Writers Stephen McFeely and Christopher Marcus confirmed this. "I think it's an everlasting exchange. There's a slot. It's like an old-time bank. It's a pneumatic tube. You put it back, but you don't get anything in return. It's not like a pawn shop." If the rumors are true, we may be getting a Disney Plus show detailing this journey. I would love to see Captain America and Red Skull interact again, but we'll have to wait and see if this rumor pans out. So unfortunately, that means the original Black Widow and Gamora don't seem to be coming back, but who knows what might be retconned in the future. Either way, we could still enjoy our favorite characters in movies like Guardians of the Galaxy and Captain America Winter Soldier. And that is part 1 of exploring the alternate branches created in Avengers Endgame. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and stay tuned for part 2.